Today we are going to be preserving some fresh sweet cherries by water bath canning. I use a 16-quart Presto pressure canner, and you can also use it as a water bath canner. The included booklet is very helpful. We are going to be using our freshly picked cherries that we got from Lodi Farms. You want to start with a cold ice bath. Some people add ascorbic acid to prevent discoloration, but we're not quite that advanced yet. This is a cherry pitter tool that I got on Amazon. They do make some where you can pit 4, 5, 6 cherries at a time, but we are just starting with the basics. So you'll pop off that stem and then line up the cherry in the pitter. And you see that metal rod, when you squeeze the handle, that rod will move through the cherry while the rest of the cherry fruit is held in place. And easy peasy, it just pops out the pit, just like that. It makes the process so much easier instead of sitting there with a knife cutting everything and using a toothpick or a straw or whatever else. This just makes it so much easier. You just pop the pits right out there, and then you have those beautiful whole pitted cherries that we can preserve for later. And I highly recommend wearing gloves for this process because cherries are messy and the juice will stain. I am actually also wearing a black shirt, which you can't see on camera right now, but when I work with certain fruits like pomegranate or cherries with juice that stains, I wear gloves when possible, and a black shirt will help keep everything nice and clean. So here we're about halfway through, and now we are finished. I've pitted that entire big bowl of fresh cherries. And of course, you want to taste test. They are absolutely delicious. And all of these cherry stems and pits will be discarded. If you have a compost pile, you can toss it in. This is my pressure canner. This is the locking tab, and this is the canning rack, which goes on the bottom. That prevents the glass jars from directly touching the metal surface, which could make the jars explode. This is the weight, and you can adjust the pressure by adding or removing those metal rings. So by itself, it's 5 pounds of pressure, and then if you add 1 ring, it's 10 pounds, 2 rings is 15 pounds. The locking lid has a steam and pressure valve, and that little button will pop up when it's full pressure and locked, this button right here. And then when you're pressure canning, that little pressure regulator sits right at the top. Although we're not going to be using that today because we are water bath canning, not pressure canning today. So let's start getting that water bath canner heated up. I like to put a glass jar in the middle filled with hot water and then just start pouring water around it. That just helps me visualize how much water I need. And the water depth should cover the top of the jar by 1 to 2 inches for water bath canning. I also like to put the lid on to help retain heat, otherwise it takes forever to get the water up to a boil. Here we're making a medium syrup. I did accidentally notice when I was replaying the videos that I measured 4 pints instead of 4 cups, but luckily even that more diluted syrup, which is technically a very light syrup instead of a medium syrup, is still safe for canning. Math gets tricky sometimes and canning is very involved, but it's all a learning process. So then we'll add that sugar water mixture up to a boil, and we'll just keep it warm while we get the cherries ready. Today we're using pint jars. Pints are nice for our family because we have a smaller family size, and quarts don't fit in the water bath canner because the height of the water can't get tall enough, although I can pressure can quarts. I use Stearamine tablets in my kitchen. I've been using them for years. They sanitize everything. I just make sure to rinse everything off afterwards. So while those jars are heating, we'll go ahead and get our cherries ready. Here I'm just showing, even though the cast enamel Dutch oven has some staining, it's fine, it's clean, it just discolors over time, so that's okay. Canning math is crazy. I'm gonna let you guys pause this video if you want to look at that in all the details, but I basically just go over the proportions of the recipe. And here we're measuring how many cherries we have by the quart. And then we'll add 1/2 cup syrup per quart. So I did the math on the screen for you. So we'll need 1 3/4 cups of that syrup, which we'll add to the cherries. And then you'll cover and bring the mixture to a boil. And you'll be careful because as soon as it does reach a full boil, the whole pot will start spilling over. And the leftover syrup can be kept in the fridge for later. So this is just before the mixture had reached a full boil. I just gave it a quick stir. And then I covered it up again for another minute. Just want to make sure all the cherries are mixed in and the juice starts to release. Let's get started for the canning. Everything is ready to go. You'll take a hot jar, and my trick is just to pour that water into the sink because the volume will be replaced by the cherries. And if you don't pour the water out, you'll end up with an overflowing pot as you continue to add volume. You'll place the wide mouth funnel onto the jar, and then you'll add your hot cherry mixture in. And you want to be careful here because everything is really hot. You actually want to have the jar right next to the pot. But of course, when I make these videos, I'm doing everything one-handed, and I try to make this all in one take. And that's okay. We don't have to be perfect. We're not a professional channel. We're a home cooking channel. And this is the little measuring tool and a debubbler that I got. And it has different steps on it, different indentations cut in that you can actually use to measure the height, measuring down from the edge of the jar. This will help you calculate the correct headspace because different recipes call for different headspace, whether it's 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or 1 inch. It depends on the recipe. And that's very important that you want to measure the correct headspace for the recipe that you're using. That helps in the preservation technique. It all has to do with very scientific things like pressure and oxygen and all that kind of stuff. And here I'm just wiping off the rim of the jar with a clean paper towel with just a little bit of vinegar. And that just helps make the surface of the glass very clean, so that when I go ahead and put that lid on, it can create a nice seal and there's not little bits of syrup or fruit stuck in between, which would prevent the lid from sealing. You'll spin the ring on until finger tight. That means as tight as you can turn it just with your fingers. You don't want to grab it and tighten it all the way because some of the air will come out during the canning process. And then you'll carefully use the tongs and immerse that jar into the water bath canner. Here I remove the extra jars. I don't always know exactly how many I'll need for a recipe because the volume does change. So I always make extras. And you can see the water depth is about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. As long as it's over an inch, that's fine. And then we'll go ahead and bring that pot back up to a boil and boil for 15 minutes. You'll then use the tongs to very carefully remove the jars. Remember, everything is really heavy, and you want to keep the jars straight upright. You don't want to tilt them or wiggle them or touch the lids. Don't touch anything at all. Just put them straight down and let them cool for 12 to 24 hours. And here in a second, you'll be able to hear the ping that I caught on camera. So we'll be very quiet now. That is the best sound for a canner. That's music to my ears. That shows that the can has sealed. Now this video clip is the next day, almost 24 hours after canning. So now the can has cooled off. The jar should be completely sealed. You can see the jar lid is flat. And you test the seal by lifting the jar by the lid, and you can see how tight that seal is when you can lift the entire jar just by gripping the lid. So this is a good seal. This will be shelf stable for 12 to 18 months. And you can see the jar does not indent when you touch it. This is a perfect seal for this jar. And here I'm just showing the method that I use to open the jars. So you'll find that threading and then follow it all the way to the top, right where that threading ends, and then grab a tablespoon, put it round side up, put it right in that indentation, and then twist, and that will pop the jar open. And of course, you'll want to add a label. You can write right on these lids with the date. I use a fine-tipped permanent marker, which works great. You'll then wash the jars with just some mild soap and a gentle sponge and then dry them off, and then they're ready for long-term storage. I can't wait to bake with these. Thank you for watching, and bete avon.